Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in our webinar tonight on overcoming burnout in home education. This is brought to you by Streams. If you haven't visited the Streams website, please do. It's streams.education. Our panel tonight is made up of Molly Ashton, Heidi Steele, Alice Camasia, and myself, Juliet English. All four of these ladies are experienced home educators who share from a place of their own wisdom and experience. And all of them are available if you want to have a private consultation to discuss anything in more detail, in a more individualized, personalized way, specific to your needs. You can find out more on the Streams website on our mentoring page. So tonight we are talking about burnout, and this is how it is defined. Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. Though it's most often caused by problems at work, it can also appear in other areas of life, such as parenting, caretaking, or romantic relationships. And this definition comes mainly from a work-based definition, but we are looking specifically at parenting and then home education, which is a very specific subset of parenting because it comes with its own unique challenges. So I want to just talk a little bit about the different things that can cause us to feel burnt out, and we'll run through them now. So the first is where you have a perceived lack of control. Life just seems to be getting away from you. You feel like you're trapped. You feel like you have to be on sort of for 24/7. And you just don't, circumstances happen to you, life happens to you. You just can't, you don't just feel like you have no control of them. The second one is when you feel like you're putting in so much effort, but there's so little reward. Now, sometimes you get intrinsic rewards. You do something that makes you feel good in yourself. You don't need much more than that. And then you get extrinsic rewards, which is when other people reward you. And like in a job, that would be your salary, or in other situations, it could be somebody bringing you a bunch of flowers. And that might make you feel like the effort is worth it. But often as a parent, you don't ever sort of see that reward. People don't acknowledge all that you do. And so we can begin to feel unappreciated, which contributes to this feeling of burnout. Then one of the other causes is when we don't have enough support. Now, this can be to do with your chores, your household chores, which are relentless. There's a quote from Downton Abbey where Maggie Smith's character talks about the on and onness of parenting. It's housework just keeps coming. It doesn't matter how many times you clean the kitchen, you'll need to clean it again. It's just something that you did today, you're going to have to do again tomorrow. And you might feel resentful because you may feel it's unfair because the majority of the load is falling on you and the children aren't helping, or your husband partner is not helping. So that if your partner isn't helping you, you may uh, feel resentful about that. And then another thing is where we are not taking care of ourselves properly. So we are prioritizing our children's needs over our own, and we begin to feel resentful and bitter because our needs aren't being met. And you're just at the bottom of the list all the time. Another one is the lack of capacity, where you're juggling so many responsibilities. You might be working as well. You have household chores to do. You've got to take care of children, and you just don't have any more physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual capacity. Then another thing is having unrealistic expectations. This can be because you're setting goals for yourself that are unrealistic. They might be self-imposed, they might be influenced by societal pressure or by social media, and it leads to us having feelings of inadequacy and burnout, because we're constantly chasing after something, moving goals. And then the last one is isolation, where we have a lack of support networks and social connections that where people are encouraging you or supporting you or offering respite or sharing their own situations and advice with you. Uh, we actually need that. And often the very thing we do is we kind of isolate ourselves because of feeling burnt out, which is what I'm coming to next when I talk about how can we recognize burnout. So how do we recognize burnout? We look at things in ourselves, what is happening within us and how is it showing itself and how we're behaving, how we are around others as well. So the first one is frustration, just feeling constantly frustrated. Nothing is working out, nothing's going right. Exhaustion, and that's a very obvious one, but just sometimes we just feel like we've got nothing left to give. Negativity, we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. We see finding fault in everything, nothing is working out, and it tends to color everything in our lives. We have a hard time finding joy, finding the good moments. Cynicism, I think in home education that can become a very real thing, because if people have said to you, oh, well, home education is wonderful, it's amazing, and it's a lot of that is true. But if our own experience is not so good, we might become a bit cynical about it. And this is why it's so important to recognize it and do what you can to overcome it, because we don't want to become cynical about something that should be a really positive thing for us and our families. We may be unmotivated. We may not feel like we want to do things. And I can actually tell you, like, how many times I've sat there thinking about all the things I need to be doing, and what I'll end up spending time just scrolling my phone. I'm not motivated enough to go and do the very thing that will actually help me sometimes, the very thing that will make me feel better. Procrastination. So that's very similar to being unmotivated, but you procrastinate. You don't feel like doing anything, so you just put it off as long as you can. You do the housework, the just needing to go and do the grocery shopping, that kind of thing. You put it off because you just don't have the energy. Withdrawal, this is often we isolate ourselves from those that can help us. We don't tell others how we're feeling. We don't reach out and get the help we need. That, once again, it's the very thing that can help you, you're actually pulling away from. Self-neglect, we don't look after ourselves. It's just too much effort. It's just too much effort. Everything, we're putting the children first. We're trying to live up to expectations. We're responding to the pressures of others around us, and we're not taking care of ourselves. Irritability, just snapping at people, not being a very nice person to be around. Stress, just feeling constant stress, maybe feeling tension in your face, feeling tension in your body, because you're carrying stress. There can be physical symptoms, so you can develop tummy aches or headaches, migraines, that kind of thing. And just generally feeling overwhelmed all the time, just no idea where to turn, where to start, because it's just all too overwhelming. And then, sorry, we have moved on to the next slide, which I didn't check to see which, but these are our burnout busters that we're going to cover tonight. So the other three members of the panel are going to cover these ones. And I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to hand over to Molly, and she's going to talk a little bit about the family aspect, working together. And I will maybe just spotlight you then. So Molly, you're on.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you. Okay, so thank you everybody for being here. It's really nice to be able to chat with you. The first one I'm talking about, we have 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just briefly do a bit of an overview of sort of some general principles about working together as a family, how you get your kids to pitch in with all the jobs there are to do. And then there's spout just a load of jobs that our children help with, and just a few things around them, and then just do a little bit at the end about additional needs. Now, I forgot to say it right at the very beginning. If it's okay, can I just do another promo for this book, Another Way to Learn, which is back to front. Several of the Streams team have contributed to it, and there are actually 2 chapters, because we recognise it's a book written by UK home educators for UK home educators, and there are actually 2 chapters at the back all about looking after yourself and kind of self-care and avoiding burnout. So one on kind of practical and things, and one on the kind of the more looking after, nurturing your soul. So yeah, really good, recommended. So anyway, the general principles, I think, first of all, just to reiterate what Juliet says, I've got here, is you don't have to do it all. We know, we always say, don't compare. It's so easy to look at other people and say, gosh, you know, they do it all. Don't compare. You have a unique family. You also have unique capacity, given the fact that the family that you have and the different other balls that you juggle. And a principle that I find really helpful is something called the Plimsoll line. Now, in Bristol, which is a seaport, we live near Bristol, and there is actually a bridge called the Plimsoll Bridge, and that's because the boats, I think there was I don't know if he was a sea captain or something, I can't remember, I did look it up ages ago, and he basically, a lot of people used to cheat the system, and they used to put loads and loads of cargo into their boats, and then their boats would sink halfway across the Atlantic Ocean. And so he, I think he was a member of Parliament or something, and so he said he instigated this thing of the Plimsoll line, which is something that has to go, a line that goes across the boat, the hull of the boat, is it called? And the captains weren't allowed to fill their boat more than that. And I think that's a really good analogy for us. You know, we all have our own Plimsoll lines, and we can't just keep piling more and more and more stuff, because actually ultimately you'll sink. So if we all have a kind of a, you know, what we can cope with, and that's different for each one of us. But if we have more than the things that we can normally cope with, then actually we need to get rid of some other things. So I think for me, that's something that's helped me all the way through our mothering. We actually, myself and my husband, we have 4 kids. 2 are actually adults, young adults living away from home. 2 are still with us. The younger 2 are both adopted, and so they come with quite a medley of some, you know, different stuff, obviously lived with trauma, and we also have additional needs as part of our journey. So I will speak a bit about additional needs at the end. So general principles, I think, to acknowledge that it is a shared space. Your home is a shared space. It's not your responsibility. So and that's worth a conversation with your kids if they're not already joining in with helping. Actually, it's not your responsibility to always do the washing up, or to always do the cooking, or whatever it is. It is a shared space. It's everyone's responsibility. It's actually good for their character. It's good for life training. One of our more reluctant sons at doing jobs, he actually chores at home. He actually did a summer job working at a butcher shop. So it was loads and loads of washing up. And he now supports his studies by working as a lifeguard. So that's loads of cleaning loos. So actually, it was really worth all those, oh, do I really have to? Because it's been very useful in his later life. So keep that in mind. You're actually doing your kids a favour by helping them to be able to learn all these life skills. And obviously they'll, want to live by themselves one day, presumably. So it's useful that they know all these things. With little ones, acknowledge that actually it's difficult. It's actually easier to do it by yourself when they're little, isn't it? But it is worth persevering. Starting off with very small things, often having to work alongside them, but it is worth gradually getting them to start doing things. Then maybe starting off by tidying up toys, then laying the table, just bit by bit, whatever fits in with your family. With teens, I actually feel that's different with them. Where I used to give, our teens, our boys, more time to do things, out of respect for them and honouring the fact that they have their own timetable of things. So I'd say, by such and such time, maybe in 48 hours or so, I would like such and such a chore to be done, and then leave it to them to work out how they do that and when they do that. I sometimes needed a prompt, but actually I found that worked better. Rotas, Some kids it works well with, some it doesn't. We've done a mixture of both. There's pros and cons of having rotas and just having, yeah, I'll volunteer kind of thing. Clear instructions, really important to give clear instructions. And I think often we can have expectations that they'll do something, but maybe if it's a first time, maybe particularly if it's like a sort of second or third or fourth child, and you kind of think, oh, well, everybody else has learned to do this, but actually you realize that maybe you've taught them and you're just assuming that they'll just imbibe. So do make sure that they know. So I'm now just going to give a complete list of chores which our children do. Now, some of these have been done pretty kind of willingly. Some children, first children are often fairly compliable. That's what the word. Anyway, they kind of do what they're told, don't they? Some are a lot more questioning. We have had huge resistance to doing chores with some of our kids, and I'll say, I've got 5 more minutes. I'll say at the end how we've overcome that massive resistance. So I'm just going to splurt out a whole load of things. So first of all, in the morning, things like emptying the dishwasher, laying the table, cleaning the table, wiping the table, sweeping the floor at the end of a meal, washing up, stacking dishwasher, tidying toys at the end of the day, or sometimes at the end of the morning if you finish your morning work, and sorting out laundry. So a couple of things with that. With younger children, I found a Montessori system for me has worked really well. So when they're little, I had a big box full of the kind of various different kind of toys and kind of things that they could be playing with, manipulatives and all sorts of things. And I got a couple of trays from IKEA. They could put their whatever they wanted to do activity on the tray, and then at the end of that they would then put it back in this big box, and then they could bring another one out. So that worked well with a younger one, and older ones you're home educating. The other thing with laundry is actually one of our daughters, it became such a big issue remembering to put her dirty laundry in the dirty laundry basket, that actually she now does her own, which actually works better. So it's, bless her, it's her responsibility. There are no clean knickers, but she's learning great skills. So that if that's difficult, that kind of worked for us. Right, weekly jobs. Cleaning the house, again, that's worked with some kids. With some of our kids, we've been able to be fairly flexible with it and just say, oh, it's looking a real mess today, let's put some music on and let's just get on, and we'll all just blitz it. With us, with the combination we have at the moment, we have to be very rigid and very structured, and it is Friday morning that we clean, and that is what we do, and there are no rewards, no screen time in the evening until it's done. We don't spend the whole day cleaning, obviously, but the reward, it comes in the evening. So again, work out, or your family's unique, work out what works for you. Sometimes you put some music on, listen to podcasts. You might want to put music on for everybody, or we actually are now, because the girls are a bit older, we all listen to individual things as we do our bit of an hour of cleaning or whatever. Always having a reward at the end is good, and sometimes, and also rotating jobs so that they all get to know, learn the different tasks that need to be done. The other things that we've done as kind of extra jobs is cooking. 2 of our kids, one of our daughters and one of our sons, are both really good cooks, so they've each cooked for us 1 meal a week. It's been helpful. Pet care, they do their own pet care. When I come back from shopping, there's several bags, and I always say, can you put away 2 or 3 shopping bags? Outdoor jobs, they help with outdoor jobs. Whether you pay a child to mow a lawn or not, we did with one of our sons, because the other one was mowing the next door neighbour's grass and getting paid, so we actually paid him a bit less to do ours. All sorts of other household jobs are things to do. Finally, a quick word about additional needs. It may take a huge amount longer. For us, it really has. And if anybody wants to talk about further on that, we've kind of run out of time now, but I'm happy to talk about additional needs. Do check that they actually understand. One of our daughters just ran away whenever I asked her to lay the table. It's because actually I realized she didn't know her left from her right, and she still can't remember unless I have the little picture of the table, how it goes. I find routine is much better for them, but there's a lot of stuff around them. The final thing is to help me, and this helps me, my stress busting is actually on a Sunday night. I've made myself a little kind of weekly planner, And if you want to have a look at that on my website, it's Mothering Through the Seasons. And if you look up Weekly Planner, it'll come up with that. You're welcome to print it off, or else just use it as a, as an idea to do one for yourselves. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Molly. Matt, perhaps you can put the link to Mothering Through the Seasons onto the chat. I'm going to bring Heidi in now. Heidi's going to talk about self-care.
Hello. Yes, I'm going to talk about self-care. Get my words right. I'm going to share 3 things with you. I actually have a whole 5-session course on self-care for parents. So it was really straightforward when Juliet invited me to come and talk about it. Although I have had to condense it down into 10 minutes. Don't worry, I'm not going to do the whole 5 sessions. So I'm going to bring in a lot of the things that Juliet mentioned in the beginning. Actually, I mean, she talked about the lack of self-care, that we put ourselves to the bottom of the pile. Sometimes we don't even include ourselves at all. So if you've got children with additional needs, if you've got larger families, or for whatever reason, we quite often don't even include ourselves at all. So we put ourselves right at the bottom of the pile. A lot of it, I think, is to do with that lack of control and that sort of comparison around what other people are doing or what we think other people are doing, that lack of capacity as well. So I'm just going to share 3 ideas with you, I guess, for you to consider, because as with everything, your situation is unique, your family is unique, your children are unique, how you home educate is unique. So just take what you can or what you want, and then maybe shelve the rest for later in your home education journey, or bin it if it doesn't work for you. So I'm just going to share 3 things really quickly. There's a quiz show called the 1% Club. And what I want you, it's got nothing to do with self-care really, other than the fact that I really like it. But I want you to take away this idea of 1%. So we quite often have these really grand ideas about what self-care should look like. It should look like a daily walk, or it should look like a spa day, or it should look like my house is clean. I mean, that's self-care. Or a daily bath with candles and wine and book and all the things. We have these really big ideas about what self-care maybe should look like. And they are quite often impractical and unrealistic when we're home educating. So the idea of the 1% is to take that big idea that you have for yourself, that you really need, and think about what 1% of that might look like. So if your big dream is to have a spa day, 1% might look like carrying nail polish around in your bag, and when your kids are at the park, you sit and paint your nails. If your big dream is having that tidy house, and that's what's going to make you feel good, just thinking about what 1% of that might look like, which one shelf can you maybe just have a go at, or even a cupboard that no one's going to go near. So my top tip is the laundry cupboard, like where you keep all the linen and the towels. Like the kids rarely go in there, so they're not going to mess that up in the 2 minutes after you've cleaned it up. It's fairly standard that that's going to stay how it is. So that's like my happy place, because I can go there day after day and it's the same as how I left it. So that's like the idea of the 1% for you, taking those big ideas about what we think self-care might or could look like, what we might like it to look like, and just beginning to introduce it a little bit. So we're not forgetting ourselves completely, but we're doing something that's doable and that's achievable for ourselves. My second point to bring to you is like, be your own best friend. Quite often the way that we speak to ourselves is can be very negative. We can be very harsh on ourselves about not doing a good enough job, not having a clean enough house. That's coming up a lot in this evening already. Not having time to do all the things that we maybe want to do, either for ourselves or for our children. We can be very critical of ourselves, and we can run that voices in our head, and just the thoughts that we have about ourselves and how we're doing can be very often very negative. So I would encourage you to be your own best friend, which is to be aware of how you're talking to yourself. And then to talk to yourself, change those words as if you were talking to your best friend. If your best friend came and said, I'm not good enough, or I never get to do this and I really want to, and I'm really rubbish at, what would your response be? How would you talk to them? So be your own best friend. It's about extending qualities like kindness, grace, forgiveness, compassion, understanding and empathy to yourself, like you would another person, your friend or your partner, or someone that in the home ed community that maybe was having a tough moment or a tough time. Just bringing those same qualities to yourself, and being your own best friend. So that's my second one. And the third one is consider your choices, which really touches on where Juliet brought in things like lack of control. So this is sort of upping your control, really considering what choices you have. It's addressing when we have a lack of capacity, just thinking about what is possible and what you are actually choosing to do right now, or today or tomorrow, that's actually within your capacity, and assessing those unrealistic expectations. So this is really to do with like, what choices are you making on a day-to-day basis, or even a moment-to-moment basis if you're feeling under pressure and you can't do those things, and those aspects that Juliet brought in about frustration and feeling under pressure, and really considering, do I have to do, so it's using, do I have to do this thing that I'm presented with? So it might be the washing up. Do I have to do the washing up right now? Do I have to, or are there other choices? So Molly gave us some other options with the washing up there. Do I have to do the laundry, or is there another choice at this moment? Could I do it later? Could I ask one of my children to come and help me? Could I ask my partner, and involve them in these things? And even simply asking our question and then the answer being yes, but moving into a space of, okay, then I choose to do this. It's quite liberating to move into a space of, remove the have to, and to move into a place where you choose. I choose to do the washing up because that's going to benefit me later when it comes to serving dinner. I choose to do the laundry because that's going to benefit everybody later when, everybody's got matching pairs of socks. That's actually not a thing in our house, but some people like matching socks, don't they? We're lucky if people have got the right socks. There's so many of us. And to really think about what you should be doing as well. So that word should, who's telling you should be doing home education this way? That's a really big one. Who's telling you how you should be doing? And to reassess that in terms of, is it actually working for you and your family? Is that approach working for your child? And to take those, or to challenge those shoulds, and to move into choosing. Actually, we choose to do things this way. And it relieves that pressure and puts you into a place of control, because you are choosing to do those things. You're not feeling out of control because someone is saying you have to or you should. It just shifts your approach slightly and shifts your attitude a little bit, to feel that this is what you've chosen. I am in control of this. So this is really about, how can you make this work for you? And that's, how you choose to home educate, as well as all these practical parenting elements that are very, very present in our lives as a family. So it's releasing that pressure and considering for yourself what you choose. I didn't introduce myself, which I will do very, very briefly, but I, like Molly, have 4 children. Mine aren't quite as old as Molly's children. My eldest is 16. I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and none of them have ever been to school. So we've been home educating for well over a decade, and I have been working in education for over 2 decades now. And I spend a lot of my time working with families like yourselves, home educating families, just helping people to find their feet and walking alongside them whilst they are living this very unique life.
Thank you, Heidi. And Matt has shared the link to Heidi's
Thank you.
website. And now, because this is about home education, I'm going to have Alice come and talk a little bit about one way you can overcome burnout, and that is where you make sure that you don't actually have to teach. So we're talking about raising independent learners, and Alice is pretty much an expert in this field. So I'm handing over to you, Alice.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Nice to be here tonight. Nice to see some familiar faces. Thanks for having me. My name's Alice Kimasia. I've been unschooling myself alongside my 4 sons for many years. They're now 22, 21, 18 and 12 this week. So yes, we have learned a lot about our children learning independently over the years. I was really fortunate to start home educating about 15 years ago, before the days of social media, with its amazing onslaught of images and ideas and methodologies and all these things, which of course can be really helpful and really inspiring, but can also be quite overwhelming sometimes, and can perhaps sometimes lead us to comparison or to fear that we're perhaps not doing enough, not doing things right. And so the great thing about starting when I did is that there really was just me and my children. And so I just want to remind you of that tonight, that that's always the best place to start, right? As we've already said, it's you. Focus on you, your children, your own family. Because as Molly said, nobody else is living your reality in your locality with the specific needs of your children and your particular situation. When we talk about independent learning, what we really want to encourage is this intrinsic motivation, where children are pursuing the lines of inquiry and the learning that they want to pursue for themselves. And there's a theory called self-determination theory, which says that there are 3 conditions that best foster intrinsic motivation. And those are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And I think those things counteract really well some of the triggers for burnout that Julia introduced at the beginning, because autonomy is about agency and feeling like you're in the driving seat of your own journey. Competence is about the feeling that you can do things and you can do them well. And relatedness, of course, is about feeling supported and connected and having quality relationships around you. So I want us to think, just as I'm talking, just think about how we can encourage those qualities, autonomy, competence, and relatedness in our children, but also for ourselves as home educators. There was a period in our home ed journey following the quite traumatic birth, actually, of our 4th son by crash cesarean section, when I was really ill. And I just really couldn't do much at all. Even getting out of bed was a real challenge. And less than 2 years after that, we moved house, which was again quite a stressful upheaval. And when I look back, that period was actually a really key time for me in my own learning and my own unschooling of my own ideas, because those events did not interrupt the learning in our household. What they interrupted was my own sense of being in control and of being on top of things and of holding it all together. Those events kind of removed me and all my anxieties and my perfectionism from the equation in our home, and it freed my children to learn as they really wanted to. And I observed their learning through those times, and I learned to see it, to really see it, and to value it, and to see them and the amazing diversity of ways in which they were learning all the time. And so I learned to come alongside them genuinely with curiosity, to support rather than to steer, and to see them and allow them to take the steering wheel in their own learning journeys. And as I observed my children directing their own play individually and together, and pursuing their own interests by whatever available means, I saw that they were intrinsically motivated, and they seemed to know in which way they wanted to develop their learning and their interests. And so I found myself kind of able to come alongside them and, you know, just help provide the environment, materials, encouragement, a sounding board if they needed it. And so it was actually a transformative period in our family learning. And it showed me what I had read in John Holt's work about trusting children and about trusting myself and the human capacity for learning, and to relinquish control and to trust the process. And it's a lesson I revisit all the time. I have revisited it repeatedly over the years because I keep having to learn it again. And those same little boys have continued to grow and continued to direct their own learning journeys up through their teens, through the process of acquiring exams and qualifications as they found necessary, and on into meaningful work. And they continue to be independent learners. And I continue to be that sounding board, that encouragement that I learned to be during those challenging times. And the challenging times themselves prove to be learning opportunities in themselves, whether it's a pregnancy, a new baby, a house move, major building works, mental health challenges, losses, traumas. They are all part of the rich tapestry of life. And we don't close our children out of this when we're unschooling, when we're home educating. It's doing life together. So rather than keeping children separate from these realities, we have these amazing opportunities for conversation, a holistic approach to their education, in which well-being and understanding and care of our own selves, as Heidi so brilliantly showed us, are key. They're part of the whole picture, the journey as we navigate life's challenges together. They can be a key element. So takeaway, how can you foster autonomy, competence? Molly talked about children's amazing capability to do the chores and to help out, and they step up in ways that perhaps surprise us. And relatedness. Who are those supportive relationships around you? Not just for your children, but for you yourselves as home educators too. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Alice. We're going to, because we've got to move on, our time is marching on, I'm going to swing right back to Molly, and she is going to talk about, give you some ideas on restructuring your days or your weeks, looking at how you can change things up a little bit in your routine to kind of help with some of the burnout issues.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, that's fantastic. Alice, our oldest one is 22 as well. And I also am so grateful that we started before social media, because it was just much easier. I think I would have been incredibly insecure if we'd had social media. So yeah, so anyway, don't look at social media too much. So we're talking about 10 minutes just to do restructuring our days and weeks, and in order to kind of to make time for fun and for rest. So I've divided it into 3 bits as well. So patterns to order our day, and then rhythms for rest, and then kind of ideas for restoring our souls. So the first one, the patterns to order our days. These are just like the structures, and then we'll talk a bit later about how we fill these, but just the structures. So for me, I find morning is I tend to be a morning person. If you're a later person, then just ignore this bit. But I'm a morning person, and I find it really important. I have to start off. So I start off in the morning. Our kids now get up. They're not early risers at all. When the boys were young and our daughter was young and they all got up early, then I wouldn't necessarily get up before them, but I would still sit with my cup of tea. For me, I read a Bible. For other people, I would say have a good book, maybe something motivational, quotes and poetry, something funny that makes you laugh. Just whatever it is that will just start your day off. I have a cup of tea, and I do light a candle. So that's kind of how I start my day, and then take some good deep breaths. So we do our work, our more structured work, and then we have lunch, and then always after lunch, again, almost always happened when they were younger. Less so now, but we still do the days when we are at home. We have a quiet time after lunch, and this really, I think, saved my soul or my sanity anyway, when the kids were all young. And so they had to go into their own bedrooms. If they shared a bedroom, then maybe one was in the bedroom and one was downstairs in the sitting room. They could have books, they could have audible stories. Sometimes one of our sons just couldn't sit still for more than 2 minutes. So that was a real challenge to get him to sit still for maybe even 10 minutes, but audible stories, bribing with, raisins, crackers, whatever I could do. And they did go to their rooms, and that period actually did get longer and longer as they were able to do that. And that meant for me, again, I could have some time by myself. I could have a cup of tea. Tea is important to me. And also increasingly, it's also time where I can work as well. So that is good. Then another sort of structure, weekly structure, is we've always done 4 days kind of structured learning for whatever structure we have, but 4 days of learning, and then 1 day, either an outing day, or sometimes I kind of call it a relationship restoring day. So we have girls' fun days, and we just go and mooch around the charity shops and have a cup of coffee somewhere, or go for a walk, or go for a swim, or meet up with friends. So sometimes it's a kind of learning outing day, and we have done lots and lots of those in the past. But actually, at the moment, the season we're in at the moment, it is mostly just mooching out and spending time together, which is focusing on our relationships. And I feel that that's actually the most important thing at the moment. So the other thing is a pattern is I always think that 6 weeks, some of you, maybe if you run school, you just go all the way through. But again, I find, I used to be a nurse, and actually I quite like routines. And I've always found that 6 weeks is enough. And so we do 6 weeks. And if the school term is longer than 6 weeks and all their friends are doing, our kids just have extra time holidays. And then over a week, I think it is good. It's countercultural to take a rest day. It really is. We're so work focused, but we do try to have one rest day, 1 day out, where after lunch, we can potter in the garden, or just do something. So we're not racing the whole weekend as either Saturday or Sunday, but we do try to do that. So rhythms to fill our time, on those structures. Things like, and this is, I love what you were saying earlier about candles, tea, hot tea for me is good. Having a good book to read, bubble baths for myself. And actually, it's then also trying to find ways to have some time out with your children. So some of you may well have either partners or mothers or aunties or somebody who will take the kids away. We never really had that, and so I very much my time out has had to be with kids in tow. So different things, tips that I've done, things like I like going for walks, and so if they're on a bike, then that means I don't have to talk to them all the time. It sounds awful, doesn't it? So I've really encouraged cycling, and I can walk and they can cycle. Things like going to the park has been really good, as once they're over the toddler age and you can actually just let them play, going to the park or a soft play place with a flask and some snacks, and I can take a book and they can play. That's a really good thing. When they're little bubble baths in the afternoon for them, I can spend hours. They kind of turn out little prunes, and then they put them into pajamas and then have a snack tea, and that's a nice easy way. In the summertime, it's much more easier playing outside and put things, if you can, a sand pit or mud kitchen. Mud kitchen worked well. One of our kids really loved a lot of sensory stuff, so she would play really muddy in the mud kitchen in the afternoon, and then straight away she'd come up and I'd put her in the bath, and then she'd be ready for bed. So that really helped over time when evenings were difficult. Things like Play-Doh, reading aloud when you're tired but you need to do something with your kids. I would just sit on the sofa with a book and just read, and they will just sit and listen as well. Audible stories are good. And I think then sort of finally just going through kind of restoring our souls, what it is for us. And I think the thing that I come down to is that we are all completely unique. And I think it is a little bit about knowing ourselves, who we are. We once did a kind of a restoring our souls rest chart, and we brainstormed all the different things that we for us, we helped for us. So that was completely different. So for me, you know, I like walking. I'm quite an outdoor person, or I'd like gardening. I like sort of doing outdoor stuff. One of our daughters is a fantastic dancer, and so she'll put on loud music and dance. Others, you know, will listen to music. Could be none of us, but it could be going for a run, could be swimming, could be going out with a coffee for a friend. I think it's quite good to have a list of things that actually for you, because what works for one person will not work necessarily for you, because you're completely unique. So find the sorts of things that help you and restore your soul a bit. And then also kind of just finally, finally, that every so often to have a soul restoring day. And that again has had to be alongside our children. I think it'd be great to do it once a term, and I sometimes manage it, sometimes not. And again, it depends on the ages of the children. So, you know, when they were young, we'd say, right, we'll just all go out for the day, or maybe they'll all just stay in, and there's probably a movie in the afternoon, but would try and do something that was maybe a load of Play-Doh to kind of prepare the day before, so that they would have things to do. And then actually it would be a really easy day for me. And again, what Heidi was saying, really getting away from those oughts. If you're a Charlotte Mason fan, and I really appreciate her philosophy in many ways, but one of the things she says is I ought. And although that could be good in many areas of life, I think sometimes we need to show ourselves quite a bundle of grace. And sometimes actually we need to say, no, we're just having a no ought day. And today we are just simply going to restore ourselves. I used to say when the kids were little, it's about filling up our teacups, or it's about filling up the car with the petrol. Mummy can't keep giving out if I'm empty. And so we're going to have a soul restoring day today, and we're all going to do nice things and things we enjoy doing. And that helped a lot. So anyway, hope that helps, and that you find some ways to be able to restore your own souls. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Anyway, so Heidi's going to talk about how you can find support.
Brilliant. There's been some lovely talk about the days before social media and being online. And I'm about to say, if it's really hard for you to find support, online is one of the ways to do it. But it's not the only way. But what I did want to maybe mention about finding support and connecting with others is this is really different to maybe if you've had children in school, how school communities work, because school communities are ready-made communities. You've got no choice about who's in your class and who the parents are, and it's sort of a bit do or die, really. In home education, you have this lovely opportunity to find spaces where you belong and where you have a sense of people around you. You are a good fit for them and they're a good fit for you, and it's genuinely supportive in a very different way to school communities and class communities. I am going to mention online because I work with a lot of parents who have children who really, really struggle to go out, and that becomes a reality of your family life for a short or a long period of time. I'm not saying that that's how it will always be. Those things do change. But during that period, where, especially if you're a single parent as well, if you've got children that really, really struggle to go outside, I really want to encourage you to find online community. There are lots of groups out there, and I can vouch for there are a significant number of parents who are in similar positions to you. So even if you only do a shout out online and say, this is me, I can't really meet people, I can't come and see you, but I really maybe share your experience if you feel comfortable, or a little bit of detail, and there will be other people who will at least be able to empathize and come alongside you and say, yes, that's our experience too. So I would encourage you to use online, although I do really value the idea that actually before online, if it was just you just have to kind of go, okay, this is my reality and this is what we're doing right now, and I've got no one to compare it to. And that actually might have been, as Alice and Molly said, actually a bit of a blessing in that time. you know, but the gold standard, I guess, for finding some support and connecting with others is really sort of regular, in real person, in person, real life. That's what I'm going for. In person, real life contact with your local community. So definitely try and find ways to connect. Again, I initially did that online, and I found it like lifting a rock. Like, I didn't know anyone who home educated before we did it. I thought we were the only people on the planet, and I was really strong-minded. Some people might have other words for it. I was strong-minded about what we were doing, even if we were the only people on earth. And then I put a little shout out, like on Facebook, just, you know, this is what, you know, we're home educating. And somebody said, oh yeah, my friend, I know, you know, my friend's home educate, she lives just down the road from you. Oh really? And they'd been doing it a couple of years. She had a daughter a couple of years older than my eldest, and it was like lifting up a rock. Like, once I'd met her, it was like underneath this rock were just like hundreds of, well, they weren't hundreds, in my town at the time there were 30 families, and they all had, you know, between 1 and 4 children each. And it was amazing. It was a really lovely, quite vibrant local community. Not everybody was choosing to home educate the same way we were, and that was fine. We all got along alongside each other and supported each other. And that was, like I said, over a decade ago. And now the people that I see regularly are still those same people, and other people have sort of come and gone, and that's, you know, people move away, people come into the group, and it's been a real blessing to have real people, especially over the expanse of that time frame as well, to know your children that well, to know the ups and downs. Like Alice was talking about, you can't really go a decade through life without experiencing, you know, the things that Alice, you know, we've had job losses, and we've had, you know, family illness, and we've had just, you know, you can't. And it's really nice to find, or to have people that you have been in contact with for that long, if you are able to, because it does come with effort. You have to really be willing to put yourself out there. And as much as I have found people that really do get along with us and my children, and where we belong, there have been groups that we've gone to where that hasn't been the case, or there have been places we've gone to where it's been a little bit tricky, and it's not really been a good fit for us, you know. So it does take vulnerability, it does take effort, it takes investment of your time, just to keep trying and to keep putting yourself out there as a family, and it takes honesty about like who you are as a family. So as much as I want you to encourage you to do those things, it's not that ready-made community that schools are. It does take that effort, you know, stepping out there and saying, this is us, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, maybe, if you want to, you know, whatever you want to share, so that you can find real people, real life. Oh God, if I got it the wrong way, in person, real life, something like that.
Well, just in real life
that you
does
can,
the job,
just
yeah.
real life stuff. But if you can't do that, then absolutely access online as well. There is lots of groups out there that can support you.
Yeah, and I read somewhere also about, it's also about us being community to others, and not needing to be perfect, because nobody wants to follow somebody perfect. You know, you're never going to match up to them. So you'd actually rather be with people who are not perfect at all. Okay, so we are going to move on now to our final Burnout Buster, which is all about field trips, and how you can use field trips to break up and to just kind of get rid of some of the issues around burnout.
Yes, thank you. Back to me. Thanks for that, Heidi. I didn't mean in what I said to downplay the real value of online community these days, because during lockdown, my goodness, we all learned, didn't we, just how precious and valuable that can be. And when you're in a burned out kind of state as well, sometimes that's actually an easier way to connect, isn't it, when you haven't got as much energy? So yeah, really important. Yeah, so the final point this evening, a little bit about field trips and just how helpful it can be for everyone to get out and about as you are able. And it doesn't necessarily mean in groups or even in company if that's difficult for you or for one of or more of your children, but just being able to get out and explore places of interest and to inspire learning in the wider world, that can be such a wonderful part of home education. And if we can tailor outings to our children's particular interests, then the value of these trips can be multiplied. And outings can also be part of that kind of rich feast that we lay for our children, some of which they might really relish and others they might not really be so bothered about. Maybe there's an outing that you might really enjoy or that you've been really wanting to make and your children could help you to plan it. I always say, as much as children can do, let them do, enable them to do it, because it really encourages ownership over activities and it builds competence, it builds confidence just for functioning in the world. Even really simple outings like a walk in your local park or a nature reserve can just be so helpful and so life-giving to you and your children, especially if you're just feeling quite burned out, because nature connection in an increasingly nature-depleted world is so good for all of us. I used to say when my boys were small that I needed to exercise them outside daily, and it was so true. And I often found that moving any activity that we were doing outside, even just into the garden, as we were able, made it much more enjoyable because the sky just somehow seemed to absorb all the noise and energy, and it was really restorative. But there are just so many opportunities, aren't there, for learning in our wider communities and for forging local connections and relationships, libraries, museums, art galleries, shops, perhaps special interest shops. Like one of my boys, we spent quite a lot of time in the local reptile store for a while. One of my sons, it was just going down to the local garage and talking to the mechanics. For another, it was his local tennis club. And a lot of these resources are free and accessible to us. And the relationships that we can build in these places as well, not only take some of the pressure from us, but they can lead us in really surprising directions and into really valuable conversations, and even perhaps to work opportunities as our children grow up. So I hope that encourages you to look outwards and maybe take some of the pressure off yourself by venturing out into the community. Thanks, Julia.
Alice. Because I wanted to add as well that field trips shouldn't burn you out either. So you do need, it should be something enjoyable, but sometimes a field trip is a really good way of just combating when we get this idea that sometimes we have ideas that we need lesson plans and timetables. And actually those are some of the things that we're talking about. Those are the very things that are causing your burnout. And actually, if you can find just getting out and about, outings should be age appropriate. They should be something that's not too abstract for the child. If you're learning about a specific subject in history, go to the museum and only go to that section. Don't try and do the whole museum in a day, because that's like just, that's a killer, because you'll put your kids off the museum anyway if you do that. So you keep it manageable. Don't let the field trip itself burn you out, but it can be an amazing way to just help it, just take all the stress out, and it's a learning opportunity. Every time you go out, it's a learning opportunity. And if you're worried about the local authority, the more field trips you tell them about, the more they've got to be impressed. So if that's what you're worried about, don't let that be your worry. Okay, so I'm going to bring all the panel back in here, and then if anyone has questions, you're welcome to unmute yourselves, or you're welcome to put them in the chat. Nobody's had questions so far, and I do realize that we have covered an awful lot of information. It's a lot to take in. So what I'd like to recommend is, if you would like to go more in depth on any of these topics, why don't you let us know here at Streams, and we can perhaps just focus on one of them for an hour. you know. And then, of course, if you want to speak to one of these ladies one-to-one, you can also set up a consultation with them. There are a couple of thoughts that came to my own mind while we were talking. So I see there's a question there, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But I think it was Molly, you were talking about the plimsoll line, or now the other, we always talk about margin. Now, you know, in the school books, you'd have like a little line, a space on the side of the page, and that is your margin. And it's one of the things is to try keep margin in your life. Don't live right up to the edge so you've got nothing left. Always try and keep a bit of margin, and that margin is in your mentally, physically. So don't push yourself physically to the limit where you're not resting enough and that kind of thing. Emotionally and financially, try not to put yourself under the pressure of living right up to the edge like that, where there's almost nothing to give. If something goes wrong, that's it. And then I also wanted to reiterate that about community, is that it's so important to reach out to community, to realize that you're not alone. Most families, most parents go through something at some point, and it's not you're not a failure. If it's not working out, you're not a failure, and you're certainly not a failure for reaching out. That is actually one of the most mature, wise things you can do, is to reach out. So I see that we have a question here from Katie. She's in burnout and she has a child in burnout. She feels bad planning to take the other two out when one can't manage leaving the house. Any ideas? So I kind of feel like Molly might be a good person to answer this one. Molly, how are you feeling about that question?
Yeah, I know people like that actually. So I guess the first thing is it is a really lonely place, but you're not alone, because there are other families who have similar situations, and I know of them. So it is really hard. I think and it is difficult with, you know, the balancing the needs of all three children, but actually you don't want the other two to go down. So my instinct reaction would be to try to get something, leave the child who's finding it really difficult to get out of the house at the moment, leave that child with something nice, whether that's some nice food or whether that's some extra video game time, or whether it's whatever that child likes doing. Leave that child with that, knowing that you're going to be gone an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. Maybe start small and move up, but do take the other two children out, because I think otherwise the other two children could, I have seen happen, get very resentful, that they're not being able to go out and do the things that they like to do because of the child who is at home, and that doesn't do any good for sibling relationships. So however hard it is, you may have somebody that you are able to come out, depending on how old the child is, that can't go out. I'm sort of assuming the child could stay in by him or herself, but they may be too young, in which case I guess you would need to, if there would be somebody that could come and sit in the house with that child. But if you can jiggle it in any way to just start taking your other two children out and kind of do it regularly, so it becomes a bit of a pattern, that every Tuesday morning you do go to the park or something like that. I don't know if that maybe helps.
Thank you, Molly. Another thing that occurred to me is that one of the things that I've been home educating 25 years now. My youngest is doing A levels, and 7 children over that period of time. And we've had international moves. We've moved cities in South Africa. We've had several pregnancies. We've had redundancies. We've had loads of things that we've had to deal with. And at one point, I did really feel that we were broken as a family, that that was it. We were just broken. And one of the things I did realize through that is actually that relationship is the absolute most important thing. That so many other things, they're not as important as we think they are. If our relationships, if we don't have good relationship with our children, and we're not sort of meeting each other in an emotional place, and that so many other things can't happen unless those relationships are kind of really in a good place. And so, you shift your focus on whatever's going to build relationship, whatever's going to kind of really just help you connect with that child. And it does mean sometimes you're having to juggle a bit when you have very different children. But often, if you can just stick it through with that child for that difficult time, they will get through it. They will come to a place where they start to feel braver and they start to feel more secure. But it's all based on that relationship that will come about. But do speak to other people who've been through similar. Do try and find others that have had to deal with it, and be kind to yourself in the situation. Be kind to your child. So we have somebody here who's trying to work shifts in and around the kids and very burnt out, which I can quite understand. It's an incredibly difficult situation to be in. You don't say how old the children are, because that's also quite key to things, because things are always much harder when they're younger. They're more dependent on you, although when they get older, that comes with a whole new set of problems. But Em, perhaps you could tell us a little more about your children's ages, and perhaps we can just give you some encouragement. And Amber, who has one child is very sociable, likes to be out and about, and the other one is stressed and wants to be at home. So we're seeing also, children that are burnt out. Claire, perhaps you could tell us a bit more about whether your daughter is sort of quite new out of school, because perhaps that could be an issue there. Okay, we've got a lot where people are juggling two different personalities with their children. One who couldn't manage school, one who attends school. Joe, yeah, and I get that feeling guilty about taking your homemade child out on adventures when you can't take your other child. But once again, it depends so much on the children's ages, whether the child who's in school wants to be in school or not, whether you don't feel able to take both out. But unfortunately, that's the good thing about home education, is you can't go out, and you wouldn't want to kind of not benefit fully from everything that home education has to offer. Okay, so Em is a nurse and it's a 5-year-old. Yes, so that is quite young. Yes, and I get that about the screen time. Yeah, so there's quite a few issues here. Does anyone feel like they can speak into specific situations here?
Yeah, can I take Claire's?
Yes,
Claire,
go for it.
So Claire has said she's got one child in burnout. She will go out with friends occasionally, but won't come out with us as a family and won't help with anything around the house. Any advice? She's very angry a lot of the time. I assume she means the child. And we are treading on eggshells. And then underneath she has written, I suspect that she has PDA, which I do have a lot of experience in our own homes.
She's also added that she's new to home ed.
And she's new to home ed. It's very, very common with neurodivergent children, any children really, when they come out of school, to really respond to the change. It is a big change, not having to go to school every day. And sometimes children jump straight into it and they're really full on and excited, and it is all unicorns and rainbows. And other times, if they've had a really poor experience, if they are PDA and school has really infringed on that aspect of autonomy that Alice was talking about, then they are going to respond very emotionally. So it takes time. I would be there for your child, allow them to express their emotions, allow them to say what they need to say, and be how they need to be within the safety of your home and in the safety of your very lovely relationship. If you focus on your relationship, getting to know your child, what they need. So is she angry because because her sensory, she's not meeting her sensory needs? There's something missing from sensory input or output. Does she need more rest? Does she need more food? Does she just need more control? It's a really, really big change. So being there and focusing on your relationship. If she enjoys going out with friends and you can facilitate that, do that. This won't last forever. Things do change. So sort of hang on in there a little bit and try and focus on being on her side and being on her team and building your relationship together, because that is the thing that's going to endure, you know, throughout the years. That's the thing that's going to make her feel safe. That's the thing that's going to make her feel secure. And then from that place, other things will happen. She may unload the dishwasher one day, or she might, you know, go out on a walk with you somewhere. Focus on your relationship and trying to figure out her needs. If you suspect she's PDA, there's going to be a lot of things going on. So meeting those needs as much as you can.
And I think part of the wonderful thing about having a panel of people here who have actually been doing this for years is that we can say to you, it will be okay. If you focus on relationship right now, it will be okay. And if you let her be, it will be okay. You know, we always feel under pressure from society and from local authorities and from all these things we're supposed to be doing. But actually, you start to realize what's really important. And relationship is right up there at the top. Character development is right up there at the top. And they have very little to do with academics. Academics is quite low down the line if you in the big scheme, the big picture. So I wanted to also say to Em, so you mentioned your child is 5. Now I'm going to say what I've said to many people, your child is only 5. In some countries, they would not even be in school yet. Don't get hung up on this whole thing that you need to be providing, you know, lots of stuff for them to be doing because they've got to keep up or match up with school-going children, because actually that's a whole fallacy anyway. School is very good at making it look like stuff is being done, but actually whether it's even happening in the child's brain or not is, again, Em, you've said is quite high needs, but play is really the most important thing right now. If you're able to really give your child the opportunity to play as much safely, but as much independently as they can with this little adult interference is really what children need at that age. It may be if it's an only child, it may be that you feel that your child needs other input, but perhaps you can find groups in your area that you can take him to where you can get an opportunity to play with other children. I foster a child he's 6 now, but he's quite high needs. And he does love to play, but he likes to play quite young games. He likes to play with balloons and bubbles and, you know, really he's fairly, you know, even little babyish puzzles. But, you know, you sort of find out what it is that absorbs them and keeps them going, because he does, you know, the play is really what you should be focusing on. I wouldn't really stress too much about trying to provide what schools are providing, because it's in the long run it's not that important. But play is.
Can I just add, Julia, as well, because I was thinking about Em as well, because just with the nursing as well, and if you're trying to work shifts around your child, I used to a long time ago as a children's nurse, and you know what you're doing anyway just at work, that is such a high intensity job anyway, Em, and you must be completely exhausted just simply from that, never mind trying to then juggle kids. So I would completely, absolutely, it's your plimsoll line, you know, completely agree with what Juliet says, you know, just let your children play. Did you say you had a 1-year-old as well? Which is also, if you do, that's massively full on. So it sounds like you're completely doing your over capacity if you have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, plus your working shift. So do try. Yes, can't remember what. He's quite 90s academically. Yes, have a baby as well. So bless you. See if you can find some nice friend who can come and take the baby sometime. And just everything else in life, you know, try and just make everything else in life as easy as you possibly can. You know, if you eat beans on toast for a whole 2 years, that's absolutely fine. They might not like it at the end of 2 years, but make everything else as easy for yourself as you possibly can, Em. And whenever you can possibly do anything nice for yourself, you know, like if it's a bubble bath or whatever you can, just try and look after yourself a bit, because that sounds majorly high intensity for you.
Yes, and he is only 5, and you know,
Mm.
if ever there's a time when you don't need to feel the pressure of providing any formal education or anything, it's now. Um, I would love you to reach out to us some more if you want a little bit more one-on-one, because it sounds like you could really do with a bit of encouragement for yourself. I do remember people always saying to me, it's just a season. It's just, and it really is. When you're in the middle of it, you feel like it's never going to end. You really do, but it will end and it will get better. And you know, that's once again things we've experienced for ourselves. There was something else I wanted to, oh yes, I wanted to also say about some of the chores. Is one of the things I've taught my children when they do complain about helping, is I've taught them to say, it'll just take 10 minutes. And I tell myself, you know, oh, I don't feel like washing the dishes. Oh, it'll just take 10 minutes. And often if you just tell yourself that, or you teach your children to tell themselves that they don't moan and carry on about it, and it changes the attitude a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I also have quite an extensive chore chart, and my children have all helped and learned to help in the house. That's quite important. And children do like to help. They like to be productive. You can find ways to tap into that. I think we do need to maybe do some more sessions along these lines. So I hope you will let us know, get in touch with us at Streams. Let me just quickly go to this final screen that I have here, just to, because it's got the web address on it. So there's the website, streams.education. If you haven't signed up on the Streams website, please do go. We would also love to hear from you. We also love to hear people's stories, reviews of resources that you've used, but we really are there to support you and to help you. So please reach out. And if you would like to see more webinars like this, if you've got specific topics you'd like to see us cover, let us know. And we will set something up quite soon again. I just want to say thank you so much to our panel. We appreciate you so much. We appreciate all your experience and wisdom that you've shared today. And thank you for all your lovely comments. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming. And I'm glad if we've helped you feel more positive. And hopefully we'll see you again.